Good morning and welcome to the webinar today. Our topic today is Champions of Change, Establishing Healthy Food Access Through Community-Based Food Systems. My name is Angie Tagto and I'm one of the co-hosts for the webinar today. And I'm really thrilled to be partnering with Jessica Burke-Fogarty, who is the project coordinator for the Regional Food System Working Group of Iowa. This webinar is brought to you on behalf of the Iowa Food Systems Council's Food Access and Health Work Group, as well as the Regional Food Systems Working Group of Iowa. Today, just before we get started, some housekeeping tips for you. We will be recording this webinar today, and so we will make it available on the Iowa Food Systems Council website probably the middle of next week for you to review and share with your networks. All attendees that are joining the webinar this morning are on mute, and we do encourage you to post questions to the panelists today throughout the webinar. Within your GoToWebinar control panel, there is a question section, and so during the webinar, we encourage you to type your questions in there. We will hold all questions for the panelists until the end of the presentations today, and then we'll filter through the questions and have more panelist engagement at that time. The Food Access and Health Work Group is a really vibrant network within the Iowa Food Systems Council, and its composition includes food and nutrition assistance program administrators, emergency food system providers, we have public health and medical professionals, many community-based organizers, and food system stakeholders. And this diverse group is focused on cultivating a diverse and just food system that eliminates hunger, increases access to nutritious food, and advances the health of all Iowans. The Food Access and Health Work Group really has a strong emphasis on that intersection of community-based food systems and healthy food access. The funding for the Food Access and Health Work Group has been provided by a variety of groups. Our current funding is being provided by the Wellmark Foundation. One of the very exciting projects that the Food Access and Health Work Group is tackling this year is the advancement of a statewide food gardening social marketing campaign. And this is just a little teaser for everyone this morning. We will be launching these campaigns on April 19th. The first campaign is focused on low resource Iowans to encourage them to think about food gardening as a way of improving self-sufficiency, boosting food security, and even putting fresh foods on their plates. The second part of the campaign is targeted to gardeners in Iowa to encourage them to consider growing, harvesting, and gleaning a little bit more food this season and to donate it to a local food pantry or food bank. So at this time, I'm going to pass things over to Jessica to give you a little bit of background on the Regional Food System Working Group.
Thanks, Angie. Thanks for the opportunity to highlight the exciting work happening across Iowa in food system development. Good morning, all. This is Jessica Burke-Fogarty. I support the regional groups and steering committee of the Regional Food Systems Working Group. And for the next few minutes, I'm going to share an overview of our work. Since 2003, the Regional Food System Working Group has created a network for all Iowans working to build a more resilient regional food system. The Regional Food System Working Group offers a collaborative environment for a diverse group to share and leverage resources and support around food system development. We're also designed to be a community of practice. Our work is supported by the Leopold Center Marketing and Food Systems Initiative. The network is mostly comprised of geographically based coordinators and community partners. We have over 45 key organizational, agency, and institutional partners. Our goal is to increase the investment in and support for local and regional food systems in Iowa. We aim to maximize the potential for community-based food systems by supporting education, conducting research, and facilitating partners. Regional Food System Working Group has documented outcomes and changes in Iowa around food systems. Change comes in the form of organizational culture adaptation, new partners joining the work, new networks formed, leveraged dollars totaling over $4 million to date, and the launch of the first effort to collect data on food activity across all regions in Iowa. Over the years, the network has grown to include 17 regional groups covering 88 counties in Iowa. Where there's white space on the map, there may be food system activity occurring. We've just not captured it yet. Regional coordinators and their community partners convene quarterly to share ideas and support for food system activities across the state. The conversations continue online through our discussion board. Please make note of our discussion group address to join the conversation. The leadership and continuous convening of the Regional Food System Working Group is provided by a steering committee. Steering committee members also serve as regional coordinators in their home region. The pie chart here displayed shows how the types of activities the regions are engaged in as of December 2012. 5 or more groups are engaged in food hub aggregation, coalition building, business development, training and workshops, Buy Fresh, Buy Local marketing campaigns, farm to school, and community outreach events. You're going to hear from 3 regional coordinators today who've had great success in food system planning and food policy councils, community outreach, and coalition building. So on behalf of the Regional Food Systems Working Group, the regional coordinators, and their community partners, thanks for joining us today.
Jessica, thank you very much. Great partnership, I think, today. Well, let's get going on our webinar. A little bit of background this morning. The World Health Organization and the United Nations consider access to safe and nutritious food as a basic individual right. However, many Iowans, and I know we have folks on the webinar from across the country today, so this does apply to you as well, but many Iowans in low-income neighborhoods, both rural and urban areas, have limited access to fresh, affordable produce and other healthful foods. People of color, women, and children are especially vulnerable. While food deserts, swamps, and hinterlands are prominent aspects of failures in food access, they do not tell the complete story. Food access is a food systems problem, not a food sector problem. Understanding the interrelated factors that contribute to food access is an important first step towards finding systems-wide solutions that can offer these fundamental changes in the availability of food and the way all eaters acquire and consume food. And again, I want to thank the Regional Food System Working Group for working with us today to bring you this webinar. Well, let's get going with introducing our speakers here this morning. I'm really pleased to introduce Kimberley Hodgson. Kim is the founder and principal consultant of Cultivating Healthy Places in Vancouver, British Columbia. She also is a visiting Sustainability and Public Health Fellow with the Metropolitan Institute at Virginia Tech. Today, Kim is going to talk about the new report, Planning for Food Access in Community-Based Food Systems, a national scan and evaluation of local comprehensive sustainability plans. This report was recently published by the American Planning Association, and it outlines the results of a 3-year multi-phased research study that identified and evaluated the food access and food system components of local government plans in the U.S. So she's bringing a national perspective to our discussion today. Kim will explore the results of the study and highlight lessons learned from several local governments in their comprehensive and sustainability planning efforts to plan for food access equity. Following Kim, we will have Jason Grimm. Jason wears many hats in Iowa. He is the food system planner at the Iowa Valley Resource Conservation and Development in the Amanas. He also started the Iowa Valley Food Cooperative. He's the president of the Iowa Food Systems Council, and he's also the team leader for the Regional Food System Working Group. Today, Jason will describe his work in developing community-based food systems, specifically in the Iowa City and Cedar Rapids areas. He'll describe the advent of the food policy councils in both of these counties and how those councils advise elected officials about policies that can improve their county's food systems. He's also going to introduce a new term today called food urbanism. Jason believes food urbanism is an important factor in planning and designing our cities so that they are healthy by design, not by capital or label-intensive programs and services. Following Jason, we have Alexi Groumoutis. Alexi is the local foods coordinator with the Southern Iowa RC&D, and she's based in Creston. Alexi is going to share with us her adventures and her travels to 7 Iowa counties when she conducted 14 food demonstrations and presentations with low-income Iowans on the benefits of buying fresh, local foods. Her presentation today is going to focus on 3 components. Fresh food can be fast, it can be fundamental, and I think most importantly, fun. And rounding out our fabulous panel today is Teresa Wiemerslage. Teresa is the regional program coordinator for Iowa State University Extension and Outreach in Northeast Iowa, so she's based in Waukon. Teresa is also the co-partner of the Northeast Iowa Food and Fitness Initiative and the team leader for the Regional Food System Working Group. Teresa's really going to be highlighting partnerships today, and specifically how the Northeast Iowa Food and Fitness Initiative had partners throughout the community, whether it's food producers, schools, businesses, nonprofits, and other governmental agencies. But today she's going to focus in on 2 specific stories about their partnerships that have increased access to local foods at farmers markets and in schools. And so with that, let's switch over to Kimberley this morning and hear about this wonderful new report that has come out from the American Planning Association. So, Kimberley.
Thank you very much, Angie. It's a pleasure to be on this webinar this morning and have the opportunity to share the stage with the other speakers. I look forward to learning about more what's going on in Iowa. So for everyone that's on the call, as Angie mentioned, I had the opportunity to work originally at the American Planning Association, Washington, D.C. That's what I was doing before I started my own business, and I got to finish this project in collaboration with APA after I started my own business. And so basically I'm going to be talking about the results of this 3-year study today. So in its basic form, we all probably know that food access is how people obtain food. You know, do they buy it from a grocery store? Do they grow it themselves? Do they get it from a food bank? Are they served it at a school cafeteria? But food access is much more complex, and it entails a number of interrelated factors. So as a result, in our project, we define food access from a community food security lens. So food access is directly related to acceptability. So is food socially and ecologically acceptable within a given culture? Food access is also directly related to adequacy. Is food nutritionally adequate in terms of quantity, quality, and variety? And, you know, is there a sufficient supply of food available to all people at all times? And then obviously the accessibility part, is food physically and economically accessible at all times? And furthermore, as Angie mentioned in her introduction, food access is a systems problem. It's not a sector problem. It's influenced by and dependent on many factors. So, you know, it's influenced on what food is grown, what land is available for growing, where it is grown, how it is grown. It's also influenced by how food is processed, packaged, and marketed. And food access is influenced by where and how food is distributed. So all these things influence what food makes it to the grocery store, into the farmer's market, into a fast food restaurant, even in a school cafeteria. So as a result of all these factors, food access at the local level is influenced by a number of local government decisions and policies. And these all impact, for instance, the amount and types of food produced within a region, the availability of processing and distribution infrastructure to support the delivery and transportation of these foods to retail outlets, the number and types of food assets and food retail outlets. And so when I mean food assets, I'm talking about community or individual food production opportunities, community kitchens, food pantries, and food banks. And then food retail outlets, you can think about farmers markets and farm stands and public markets, but also sit down and take out restaurants, cafeterias, supermarkets, grocery stores, convenience stores, and so on. And so local government decisions also impact the density and size of these food assets and outlets across the community, their location and spread across the community, and also their proximity to residential areas, workplaces, schools, and other common destinations. And last but not least, the nutrition quality, cultural appropriateness, and affordability of available food is also influenced by policies. And then the availability, accessibility, and cost of transportation to obtain food obviously impacts how people access it. So our study included 3 main phases. The first phase was the identification phase. So we conducted a national survey to identify what communities have a local comprehensive plan or sustainability plan that explicitly address the food system and food access issues. The second phase was the plan evaluation phase. So, to what extent are these local governments comprehensively addressing these issues in their plan's vision, guiding principles, goals, objectives, and policies? And the last step included the examination step. So we conducted key informant interviews with stakeholders from a variety of communities to dig a little deeper to try to figure out more about the process of developing these plans and how they're being implemented on the ground. But before I get into each of these 3 phases of the study, I think it's really important to provide you with a little bit of background about local comprehensive planning. So most local governments are required by state statute to develop and implement a comprehensive plan. So the comprehensive plan in some places is known as a general plan or master plan, but it establishes a 10 to 30-year vision or blueprint for the future of a community. It identifies social, environmental, and economic problems and opportunities within a community, and it addresses the interconnections between these problems, and then outlines a series of goals and action steps for how the community should address these problems, but also achieve a future vision for the community. And what's really important to note here is that since the development and implementation of comprehensive plans are often required by state law, it provides a legal foundation for subsequent local level regulations, policies, and ordinances, and it guides public and private decisions that affect the long-range future of a community. So we also looked at local sustainability plans, and local sustainability plans are a type of local level strategic plan. They're a little bit different though than comprehensive plans because they are not required by state government. But what's nice about these sustainability plans is because they're not required, there's a little bit more flexibility in what types of issues they address. And so we're finding that sustainability plans are addressing new and emerging issues like health, equity, food, greenhouse gas emissions, and so on. And they're also expanding issues that might be addressed in the comprehensive plan, but haven't been so in detail. But why they don't have any legal standing, often they're connected in some way to the comprehensive plan, and which I mentioned does have legal standing. And finally, the local planning process for both the comprehensive and sustainability plan typically includes 6 steps. So the development of partnerships, the measurement of existing conditions, engaging the community in the whole entire planning process, developing the plan itself, and then obviously implementing the plan and evaluating progress and tracking change in how the plan is being implemented. So the national survey. In June and August 2010, we conducted a national survey of planners across the United States. 888 US local governments responded to our survey. And of that 888, we identified 69, so only 8% of those, that said that their local government's comprehensive plan explicitly addressed one or more aspect of the food system. We also identified 17 sustainability plans that explicitly address one or more aspect of the food system. And I should mention that these at the time in 2010 were adopted plans. We also identified quite a few plans in draft form that since have been adopted. And so it actually is quite exciting. Since 2010, there has been a lot of movement on the ground, but we were really looking at the kind of the early adopters of looking at these food systems issues. So this map shows kind of the concentration of where these 69 comprehensive plans and where these 17 sustainability plans were coming from. So we identified quite a bit in California, Florida, North Carolina, the Midwest, and Oregon and Washington. We only identified a couple in the South, so you can see that dot in Texas is Austin, Texas. So as you can see, the spread is not quite even across the country. So what kind of topics did we discover that these plans address? So the majority of comprehensive plans in our study that addressed the food system were addressing issues like rural agriculture, which was not surprising because this is a topic that planners have been addressing for a while in terms of farmland preservation. But what was surprising is that food access and availability was the number 2 most cited topic in these plans, and then urban agriculture. Some issues that didn't come up in the comprehensive plans as much were things related to food marketing, food assistance, and food consumption. We found a similar trend among sustainability plans, but because the sustainability plans in our sample were primarily from municipalities rather than counties, rural agriculture was not high on this list, but urban agriculture was, and again, food access and availability and food retail. So moving on to the plan evaluations, this was the second part of our study, as already mentioned, and basically we wanted to evaluate a subset of these identified plans to see, what food system topics were being addressed, but how were they being addressed, what types of goals, objectives, and policies were included to promote access to safe, nutritious, affordable, culturally appropriate, and sustainably grown food. We also wanted to find out, how these plans were addressing implementation, monitoring, and evaluation of these food-related goals and policies. So these next 2 slides kind of show you the composition of the plans in terms of how many goals, objectives, and policies were included in these plans to address these various food systems topics. And so I highlighted here the food access goals, objectives, and policies, and the urban agriculture. So the ones in black, the numbers in black, those correspond to the number of food access goals, objectives, and policies, and the numbers in white refer to the number of goals, objectives, and policies related to urban agriculture. So as you can see, there's quite a bit of difference in terms of how each of these communities in our sample addressed these issues, or to the extent to which they address these issues. But that has a lot to do with context and also, as we found, the need in each of these communities. So for instance, Kings County, California, there were 6.5, sorry, we had a few reviewers, that's why you see the averages here with the 0.5, but we had over 6 goals, objectives, and policies that addressed food access, and Southgate, California had 13, while Austin, Texas only had 1. So this is the overview of the composition of sustainability plans. Again, you see, quite a few more goals, policies, and objectives that address urban agriculture here. That's the white numbers, and then a few less related to food access. With the exception of San Francisco, as you can see, they had 26 components of their plan that addressed urban agriculture and 13 that addressed food access. So we also looked at the types of strategies these local governments identified as ways to improve food access equity. So the most popular strategies were actually related to improving access to farmers markets and improving access to community gardens. To a lesser extent, these communities address strategies to improve the variety of healthy foods offered by fast food restaurants. We actually only had 1 community in our sample that addressed that issue, and that was Kings County, California. Small grocery stores was addressed by King County, Washington, and Southgate, California. Not one of these communities addressed the need to reduce access to fast food restaurants. We found some similar things among the sustainability plans. So a few of the plans addressed a number and range of strategies. So Philadelphia, San Francisco, and Baltimore had 3 or more strategies that they wanted to implement in order to address food access. Again, the majority of these communities addressed the need to improve access to farmers markets, improve access to community gardens, but not one addressed the need to reduce access to fast food restaurants. So it's interesting that all these plans we looked at really focused on the carrot approach rather than the stick to improving food access. So I'm going to provide a couple of examples here. So first is Southgate, California, which is a suburb of Los Angeles. And they include one goal and several objectives and policies directly related to the issue of food access inequities across their municipality. So this slide is the results of a mapping exercise they did as part of their plan. They really wanted to identify the location of grocery stores, fruit and vegetable markets, where WIC was accepted, and they also wanted to identify where the liquor stores are, the convenience stores, and the fast food restaurants. And because of this exercise, they were able to show that there are some inequities in the distribution of these various types of healthy food stores and unhealthy food stores. So as part of this and other efforts in their planning process, they developed one overarching goal, which they called safe, convenient access to healthy foods for all residents, and several objectives and policies to help achieve this goal. So objective 5.1 states, encourage safe, convenient opportunities to purchase fresh fruits, vegetables, and healthy foods in all neighborhoods. So in order to achieve this goal and objective, the plan states that there are many things that the city is going to try to do in the future and try to change their policies in order to help improve food access. So they listed a few things in their plan. One was to develop an economic development strategy for the attraction and retention of high quality grocery stores. Another strategy or policy was that they said that every residential parcel should be within a quarter mile of a healthy food outlet. They also said that the city should expand access to certified farmers markets. This includes expanding the number of hours of existing markets, pursuing new markets and transit accessible locations, and supporting expanded transit service to bring residents to and from farmers markets. In addition to some of these policies, they also did a good job with the implementation piece. So, you know, those sound like great policies and great strategies to move forward with, but how are they actually going to implement those on the ground? So they had a section detailing various actions that the city would move forward with after the plan was adopted. And so basically one of their main actions was to review city codes and ordinances for their impact on health. So basically how these city codes and ordinances impact, for instance, the location of fast food restaurants and liquor stores, the concentrations of liquor stores, and then also the availability of land to grow food within city limits, and so on. They also said that another action would be to create guidelines for healthy food at city buildings and events, and to develop a business attraction strategy to bring more healthy foods to the city. So the other example I'm going to share with you is from Cleveland, Ohio. So the Cleveland, Ohio developed a sustainability plan that largely focused on one food systems issue, and that's urban agriculture, but they did so from a food security and food access perspective, as well as an economic development, community development, and neighborhood revitalization perspective. And so as part of the sustainability plan, they also did some mapping. They looked at the distance to grocery stores. So the grocery stores here are the little dots in squares in orange. And then so people that don't have access to grocery stores are located in the dark purple areas. They also looked at distance to fast food. So in this map, as you can see, people are a lot closer to fast food restaurants than they are to grocery stores. And then finally, they looked at distance to community gardens and urban farms. And as you can see from this map, there are many more areas that don't have adequate access to community gardens and urban farms. So as a result of this part of the study, they basically created 8 main strategies that address a range of urban ag issues and try to address some of these access inequities. So one of the main policies that they stated is that they really want to establish a citywide goal that every Cleveland resident would be within a minimum half a mile radius of a community garden or market garden. They also included a few policies related to land tenure, water access, and compost. So as a final component of the evaluation, we assigned and calculated overall composite scores for each local government plan in our study, because we wanted to account for not just the topics and the strategies addressed in each plan, but also the quality of the plan. So the quality of language used for goals and objectives and policies. So were these goals, objectives, and policies written in a way that was action-oriented, that was mandatory or required, instead of being voluntary or optional? And then finally, how did each of these plans address implementation, monitoring, and evaluation to ensure that the plan actually had an impact, so it wasn't just a plan that would sit on the shelf and collect dust. So considering all these categories, some of the higher scoring comprehensive plans in our study included Marin County, California, and Sacramento, California. As you can see from this graph, that these two plans addressed all 5 areas that we were looking at. So food access, food systems, strong language, and they also addressed implementation and evaluation. It was interesting with the sustainability plans, we found that many more addressed implementation and evaluation. And this is perhaps because, again, there are no legal teeth to sustainability plans. So having this language in the plan doesn't necessarily mean it's actually going to happen. But as we found out from our key informant interviews, these sustainability plans are actually having quite a bit of traction. So last but not least, I'm just going to provide a few key themes that we've discovered in our key informant interviews with stakeholders from these various communities. So the purpose of the key informant interviews was really to delve a little bit deeper into how and why these food access and food systems components were in the plan in the first place, and what opportunities and barriers were faced along the way, how the local governments engage the community and other partners in the plan development process, and how the food access components of the plan are being implemented, and what kind of impact are they having on the ground. And last but not least, what is the role of government and non-government partnerships in implementation? So we discovered, I guess, 9 key findings. And basically, I'm just going to highlight a few. But the plans that were really successful in having a smooth development, adoption, and implementation process really did a great job of partnering with a cross-section of local government department staff. So it wasn't just the planning department that were leading these efforts, but it was the planning department working with the health department, working with economic development department, working with various stakeholders in the local level, but also, working with a cross-section of non-governmental partners. And that was really important, more so for the implementation side, because with limited funding, because of the economic recession, a lot of local governments just don't have a lot of funding to implement some of these components of the plan. And so they're finding that these partnerships were crucial in with non-governmental organizations in actually implementing some of the strategies in the plan. We also found that a collaboration with a local university was very important in analyzing the issues. So really collecting data and analyzing issues, which this can be time intensive and costly, but in partnering with the university, it's kind of a win-win situation, because they need to do research, they need to have opportunities for their students, and then the city or the county can learn from those efforts. And last but not least, I'm just going to highlight a few more from this slide, and that's that we discovered in terms of the sustainability plans that we looked at, that while they didn't have any legal standing, they had a huge impact on other efforts in the city and other plans. So in most of the cases, we did find that if food was addressed in the sustainability plan in a city or county, but not in the comprehensive plan, it later was addressed in the comprehensive plan. So for instance, Baltimore ended up officially adopting their sustainability plan as a component of the comprehensive plan. Philadelphia ended up moving forward with addressing food issues and food access issues and a number of plans because it was first addressed in the sustainability plan. And then last but not least, the communities that did a good job with implementation really did a good job within the plan in clearly identifying the different strategies, the time frame where the funding would come from, who the lead agency or organization would be, and what their roles and responsibilities would be. And finally, what were the biggest impacts of these plans? So across comprehensive and sustainability plans in our study, we found that having these issues in the plans really did an amazing job of heightening the awareness of these issues among elected officials and government staff and legitimizing these issues in their minds. It also led to a variety of new partnerships within government and outside of government, and also the review, reform, and development of new administrative procedures, regulations, policies, and programs. And I'll end briefly with talking about Philadelphia and the impact that their plan, which is called GreenWorks Philadelphia, and it's their sustainability plan, and it addressed a variety of food systems and food access issues. But basically, because of this GreenWorks plan, they had numerous positive impacts on policy change to improve the local food system. So as I mentioned before, the GreenWorks plan influenced the inclusion of food access related goals in the new comprehensive plan, as well as the related zoning code. This is a slide or an image from the new comprehensive plan. And so basically it led to a more detailed study of food access equity issues across the city. The plan, the GreenWorks Philadelphia Sustainability Plan, also influenced the regional transportation plan, and it led to the creation of several goals linking food access and transportation. The GreenWorks Philadelphia plan also led to and encouraged the development of a healthy corner store program to improve healthy options in small convenience stores, bodegas, and other small stores. And the GreenWorks Philadelphia plan also really supported the Communities Putting Prevention to Work grant that Philadelphia, the Department of Health, had received from the federal government. And then, in addition, Philadelphia developed an incentive or double value redemption program to increase the purchasing power of federal food assistance in supporting healthy food purchases at farmers markets and other healthy food retail outlets. So that's about it in terms of what time I have to cover this very lengthy 3-year study, but I encourage you all to go to this website, and it's downloadable for free. I should mention that the appendix has a wealth of policy language examples, as well as evaluation criteria and metrics and so on. So I do encourage you to browse through that. And I'm just going to end with mentioning that I am part of a new USDA-funded project. I'm working with the University at Buffalo, American Farmland Trust, American Planning Association, and Ohio State University to really research and provide technical assistance about how to address the concerns of struggling farmers and vulnerable consumers by building capacity of local governments and their partners to create and implement and sustain food system policies and plans that, on the one hand, promote food security, and on the other hand, foster a healthy agricultural sector. So I'm going to end with that, and thank you very much for this opportunity, and I hope you all.
Kim, thank you so much. There's just a wealth of information in that report, and I just encourage everyone to take a peek at it because it has just so many great resources and best practices in that report. Thanks. So with that, we will turn the mic and the slides over to Jason Grimm. So Jason.
Thank you, Angie and Jessica, for asking me to speak today. I'm just going to minimize some things here. So again, I'm Jason Grimm. I come from the Iowa City Cedar Rapids region of eastern Iowa. And Angie gave a really good introduction of me at the beginning. So I'm going to talk about food urbanism, theory of mind, as well as how it relates to food policy within our regions and also within our county governments. The primary goal is to kind of, if you look at this small graphic, we want to make more connections and increase access for both our producers and our consumers to interact with each other more often. So. I'm just going to cover briefly what I define as a community-based food system and kind of why that is important. Cover why food access and supply is important both at the local, state, and national, and the issues that relate to those. Then talk about some county-based policy efforts within our region, and then talk about my theory of food urbanism, and then finish with the why and what evidence exists of why this theory is important. So again, this is the region of Iowa that I come from. We're one of the faster growing regions within Iowa by population, but still very small population compared to other places in the country. A community-based food system, I define it as it's all the different sectors of our food system, from the production to the marketing and the waste management. But every food system is different because of the people in the past, cultures, and that have lived within those regions that really define what foods are consumed, what foods are grown, and what types of events and festivals happen around that food. So again, this is just a graphic just to explain that, but the relationships and the culture within that region really define that food system. Community-based food system is also very important because from a social perspective, it increases the opportunities for us as society members within our communities to interact with each other more often. To kind of cover why this is important from a local, state, and national perspective, these are just a couple graphics. This was from a research study of mine during my senior thesis at Iowa State. So this graphic here represents the healthy food outlets in Ames that were available of grocery stores. And then this map represents the convenience stores, liquor stores, and other unhealthy food choices as well. And the circles represent a 5-minute walk to each of these locations. And then this is just an image that I will show you later on, but this represents all of the grass mowed spaces that we put a lot of capital expenses into maintaining within our cities. Also within our cities as well as our counties, access to unhealthy food stores is much more available per capita than it is for healthier food choices. Here in Iowa, we also import over 90% of our food from outside of the state. So from a security perspective, if our roads and our trains and our boats stop moving someday, Iowa, from a food security perspective, also has a very large issue to resolve as well. Again, our food system has a huge impact environmentally in our food system because of how far food travels to our state. Our health plans are increasing because of poor health within our communities. Iowans as well as others are becoming far more obese, and our next generation is drastically, their health is drastically decreasing faster than our other populations. And then nationally, another large issue is that farming today is not really considered a profession as it was back in the 1920s, when 20% or more of our labor force was within farming. So for us to achieve better food access, we also need more farmers. And within our region, we have multiple levels of food system planning and strategic discussions that happen. At our regional level of 9 counties, our organization or coalition is called the Field to Family Regional Food Coalition, and we discuss all different parts of our food system. Our strategic plan has 6 goals, and they relate to different sectors of the food system, from the viability of our production system, the infrastructure, the availability of of our food, marketing and access to these food choices, the knowledge or food literacy of our community, and then how do we use that food, the waste that comes from our food system at the end. Just a sample of the organizations that have been part of this as well. Everyone ranges from nonprofit to county agencies to city organizations and everywhere in between. Within Linn and Johnson County, just to briefly highlight some activities that are happening within those two counties. Linn and Johnson are the homes of Iowa City and Cedar Rapids, where our larger population exists within our region. In 2012, under my guidance, the Board of Supervisors passed a resolution within each of their counties to establish a food policy council that was appointed by their Board of Supervisors. Each council, within their resolutions, they had to cover areas to provide advice to the county as well as other organizations within their county. They have to hold 2 public forums within their counties to gather input from the community as a whole. Develop a set of governing principles and strategic goals that their county can use to guide future decisions that they have to make, and then also provide annual reports of accomplishments and findings to both their own county as well as our regional coalition, and then identify and report back. Actually, right about now, both of our councils are reporting back to their county boards on a sample of issues within each county related to local land use policies and rules, methods for promoting rural and urban businesses to drive regional demand for locally produced foods, and then county food purchasing policies and practices that each county can have. And the last thing, each council also has to develop an annual workup plan, and as well as potential sources of funding for themselves. So in Johnson County, they have made a draft set of recommendations so far for their county, and this is just a sample of those recommendations that I wanted to highlight today. Is they're going to be proposing to their county to create purchasing policies for any types of food purchase within the county departments. They want their county to also collect and publicize those dollars that they're spending on local food. Establish a minimum goal for local food purchases, promote and research opportunity of creating a local food label for their county that producers can use to market themselves within the county, and then increase education about local food within their social service departments that the county has. In Linn County, their council has not came up with a draft plan yet, but this is a sample of 3 things that I pulled out of their discussions that cover food access that are important, I thought. Within their plan, they want to incorporate the idea of food security to be required to be part of their county hazard mitigation planning that happens every couple of years. They want to make information about access to healthy foods available through the county's social media programs, and then work with appropriate entities to eliminate food deserts within their community and county as well. In Linn County, at the same time of their food policy council discussing these issues, I have been working also with their Linn County's planning department and their director, Les Beck. Iowa 2 years ago passed what was considered their smart planning legislation that suggested to county and city municipalities to develop comprehensive plans that incorporate smart planning elements. So at the time, Les Beck and his department are updating their rural land use plan, and they're implementing these smart planning elements. So these elements that they're incorporating are livable communities, sustainable development, transportation, economic development, and employment opportunities, and hazard planning. Within all these plan elements, local food and the food system as a whole have come up through all the steering committee meetings that the county has been holding. Within livable communities, one of the objectives is to enhance the access and availability of healthy foods, and a policy that is being incorporated within that, underneath that objective, is to allow the utilization of mobile food vendors to help provide new healthy food alternatives throughout the county. Within the economic development area, they want to encourage development and retention of agriculture. So one of the policies is to support the goals and objectives of their county council. And then within the economic development also, they want to support through policy and regulation to help them cite local food system activities such as processing and distribution within the county. And then again, within the hazard planning section, an idea of a food emergency plan that would be incorporated within their hazard mitigation plan, that would be for in the case of a food shortage after a human or natural disaster. As Angie mentioned, I'm also the board president of the statewide Iowa Food Systems Council, and I see that our statewide council to be the conduit for our county councils and our regional food system working groups to be able to provide recommendations for policy and research options that us as a statewide council can take to our state legislature to recommend policies that can impact, for policies that impact the entire state versus a individual county or municipality. So I want to wrap up my presentation for the next 5 minutes to talk about food urbanism. It's a theory that I created a couple years during attending Iowa State, and as Angie explained it, I thought was even better, but how I define it is how food relates to the organization of a city and how it becomes infrastructure that transforms our urban experience and how we live within our cities. This is a simple typology that I created to define different aspects of how food can be grown within a city, from private gardeners up to commercial urban farms. Just want to show you briefly, this would be just a sample like urban fabric of a city on a grid structure. Like most of our cities are developed, this structure would not have to be perfectly square like the graphic shows, but the vegetables and crops that you see within this diagram represents the topology that I just showed to you and how it would be incorporated into our city structure as a planning guiding tool to help guide our cities as they develop and grow. This system would also fit within our circulation system within our city to help improve and create more walkable communities, more safe routes to school, to minimize conflicts between auto traffic. So again, the Market Boulevard, and I'll show you more detailed examples of these, but a Market Boulevard would be sort of the centerpiece of our backbone of our cities as they grow, where a lot of commercial development would be focused around public transportation as well. Private residence gardens would fit within our fabric as they do today within our own private homes and apartments. Community gardens would fit within the fabric into neighborhoods to provide an opportunity where neighborhood residents can socialize with each other as well as grow their own food. Food boulevards would provide a place within neighborhoods for people to circulate from neighborhood to neighborhood and from residential to commercial districts through corridors that are used for food production. Institutions would have their own garden spaces. Typically in most communities, our churches and our educational institutions own the majority of our land within our cities. Neighborhood farms would provide a park space, like a neighborhood park where you go to after school to play at a playground for half an hour to an hour. And then urban farms would be another opportunity where it would be like a city park where you go for a soccer tournament for the day with the whole family, but food production is incorporated into that. So this is an example of a community garden plot that would fit within the city of Ames that I had developed that fit within a neighborhood of apartments and condos. So utilizing land that was not planned to be developed to produce food. This was a food boulevard where I was retrofitting existing street that was used as a bike route, but that served the apartment buildings that were both north and south of this street. This would be a Lutheran Services. It's a children residential home for children under the age of 18, where they recreate, but also they would be able to provide their own food. This neighborhood farm is currently a park or a school owned by the school district within the city of Ames, but provides an opportunity for the city or the neighborhood to use it as a neighborhood park, as well as to produce food within a commercial farm atmosphere. And then this was an example of an urban farm within the city of Ames that could be developed on land that was currently owned by the school district. Just to highlight some of the potential, so with using some basic math and calculations, on a neighborhood farm of 2.5 acres, I had did some calculations to be able to assume that if all these crops were grown, that this neighborhood farm could support 112 people within their neighborhood with all of these fruits and vegetables on an annual basis within that neighborhood. These calculations really allowed me to better understand how much land within a city or would a municipality have to put into food production to provide just half of the fruits and vegetables for that community. So within Ames, I did some calculations, not including the Iowa State University population, but just the city community residents. So I did a calculation that it would only take about 560 acres within the city of Ames. And if you compare this to other cities across the state, like Dubuque, this is a good model to show that it doesn't take much land in all of our cities to produce a lot of our own food. And if you remember back to the original graphic that I showed of all the mowed space within the city of Ames, and that acreage I added up to 4,500 acres. So it's considered to the amount of open space, it is a very small amount of space that we'd have to put into food production. So just to show you some examples of what this will look like within our cities, this would be an example graphic or bird's eye view of a market boulevard within our communities. This would be an example of a neighborhood farm that could be incorporated next door to an elementary school within our urban fabric, where it's another place where people can purchase and buy food within a residential or city urban fabric. And these are just some examples of activities that, if a fabric like this was developed in our cities, of these new activities that would populate and happen within our neighborhoods. So this is a organization in Iowa City called Backyard Abundance, doing a urban fruit tree installation within a residential neighborhood. Or in Cedar Rapids, where an organization called Matthew 25 in the last year has worked with the city to create an ordinance that allows urban commercial farming. So last year was their first year of farming, where they marketed 31 CSA shares within their neighborhood and off of a 2-acre urban farm that they've developed, and also provides a training opportunity for new volunteers and others that come from outside the community. So just some evidence of how this can impact our cities. Our health, if you look at poor, inadequate nutrition within our communities, has the result of cancer, diabetes, hunger, heart disease, and a lot of other things. But the ways that we can improve that is, or the reasoning because a lot of those things within our cities is limited access to grocery stores, farmers markets, concentration of unhealthy food choices, and also unhealthy advertising as well. Lack of physical activity is a result of limited access to open space within our parks, separation of where we work from where we live. So by developing an urban food system, this would provide more opportunity for active and physical activity within our neighborhoods. Within our urban areas, our air, soil, and water is polluted, causing other health effects. And those are primarily because of a lack of green space and open space as well too. And then social isolation, because in our communities we do not have places anymore for us to come together and socialize with each other like a farmer's market does. We also have a lot of health effects that is a result of those items as well. So again, I thank Angie and Jessica for inviting me to share kind of our results so far in our counties as well as our region, and I'm welcome to also share any resolutions that our counties pass with others within their communities that they would like to support.
Jason, thanks a lot. I think one of the things that still surprises me is that we live in the heartland with 86% of Iowa's landscape dedicated to agriculture, yet we import 80 to 90% of our food. Really brings a new light on food insecurity in the state, doesn't it? Okay, well, let's switch speakers and move over to Alexi. So, Alexi, welcome.
Hello, how are you?
Great.
Okay, well, I'd like to first thank Angie and Jessica for this opportunity today. My name is Alexi Groumoutis, and I'm the local foods coordinator for Southern Iowa Resource Conservation and Development in Creston, Iowa. I serve Adair, Adams, Union, Clark, Taylor, Ringgold, and Decatur counties. Last summer, I traveled to 7 Iowa counties and conducted 14 food presentations/demonstrations funded by a farmers market grant on the benefits of buying fresh local foods. Rather than trying to create my own event and having people come to me, I instead went in search of events already taking place. I set up food demonstrations at county fairs, farmers markets, as well as other community celebrations. But in my quest to make a difference, I wanted to focus more on the underserved, underprivileged populations, and so I lined up a series of food demonstrations at WIC clinics. WIC, as I'm sure you already know, is a federally funded health and nutrition program for women, infants, and children. My demonstrations took place pretty much anywhere the WIC clinics took place, in clinic lobbies, church basements, and one of the WIC clinic sites happened to be located in a secondhand shop in Bedford, Iowa, so that's where I set up my shop. My presentations consisted of preparing mostly easy, no-cook recipes with fresh local produce. For the purpose of the live food demonstrations, I chose this no-cook method because for one reason, it was easier. I didn't always have access to kitchens or electricity. In addition, it was summertime, in Iowa no less. So I wanted to prepare lighter meals and demonstrate that delicious local food can be made with minimal cooking, and you don't necessarily have to turn your kitchen into a disco inferno in the dead of summer. So when I did include cooked items, it was something simple like pasta with fresh vegetables. My goal was to include recipes that had ingredients, or at least main ingredients, that could easily be found at farmers markets. Just to give you an idea, some of the recipes I prepared included panzanella salad, which is a simple toasted bread salad with fresh tomatoes and onion. I also prepared watermelon arugula feta salad. I prepared pasta salad with fresh tomatoes and raw zucchini. Another one of my dishes was a white bean salad, which I dressed with a lot of fresh herbs in the recipe. And I also made a fresh gazpacho soup. I created recipes that were versatile, in which one ingredient could be swapped out for another. And I listed alternative ingredients on the recipe card. It was important to let people know that you don't have to follow recipes exactly. If you don't have one thing, then simply replace it with something else. I often included fresh herbs into my recipes. Fresh herbs don't always get the recognition they deserve. And I feel like fresh herbs are underused and misunderstood and can sometimes be a little intimidating, which is unfortunate because fresh herbs have the ability to brighten any dish and really become a game changer when you add them to a recipe. Again, it's one of those ingredients that can be left out without completely destroying the recipe if need be. During my live demonstrations, I passed out Buy Fresh by local directories. I passed out recipe cards with the recipe I was preparing that day, and on the back side of the card, I included food tips. I also brought along a presentation board on the benefits of buying fresh local foods, and I handed out My Plate coloring sheets for the kids to take home. My Plate is the current nutrition guide published by the United States Department of Agriculture. My presentation board focused on 3 benefits to buying fresh local foods. Number 1, fresh local foods can be fast. Number 2, fresh local foods are fundamental. And number 3, fresh local food can be fun. Number 1, fresh local food can be fast. As I mentioned earlier during my live demonstrations, I prepared recipes with fresh local produce. But on the flip side, I had to take people's lifestyles into consideration. When we want to change hearts and minds with messages such as eat healthier, it's easy to want to say, throw out all of your processed foods and only eat fresh, healthy foods. Well, as we know, underserved, underprivileged populations rely heavily on cheap, processed, boxed foods. In addition, it's not unusual for food banks to hand out these types of packaged foods to people in need. Now, I know more CSA programs are popping up and helping underserved populations, and I know more and more farmers markets are accepting SNAP, but it's not mainstream yet, and so there is still a lot of progress to be made on the fresh foods front, especially in rural Iowa. I needed a way to get the underserved population excited about fresh local foods. And with this approach, I had to be careful not to scare them off by telling them to clear out all of their cupboards and pack their fridges with only fresh fruits and vegetables, although that would be nice. So with the guidance from my mentor, I had a meet them in the middle approach, or a baby steps approach, so to speak. On my presentation board, under the title Fresh Food Can Be Fast, I listed fresh produce that can be added to boxed foods, already prepared foods, or other pantry items they might already have on hand. For example, spinach, broccoli, peas, Swiss chard, kale, asparagus, and fresh dill can all be added to macaroni and cheese. Peas, cabbage, lettuce, carrots, eggs, fresh basil can all be stir-fried and added to ramen noodles. Now, would I love to say, throw it all out. Throw out your boxed foods. Get rid of it. Get rid of your ramen noodles. Get rid of your hamburger helper. Yes, absolutely. But is it going to happen? Most likely not, or at least not right away. And there are 3 reasons as to why. One reason is underserved populations are on a limited budget. They don't have access and they can't afford fresh foods all the time. However, it's important to remind them it doesn't have to be an all or nothing approach. They don't have to spend $30 or even $20 at the farmer's market on fresh produce. Encourage them to pick up 1 or 2 things to incorporate into a meal. It's also important to let people know if they come towards the end of the day, when the farmer's market is wrapping up, many of the producers are anxious to get rid of their produce, and so they may be able to purchase fresh produce for a discounted price and stretch their dollar. The second reason it's unrealistic to think that they're just going to toss out all of their boxed foods is people who have grown up on processed foods actually develop a taste for processed foods, and they actually enjoy these kind of foods. As much as I feed this body fresh fruits and vegetables, and trust me, I get more than my fair share, there's still that little voice in my head that reminds me just how much I love ramen noodles. So if I'm going to give in to my hankering, I might as well add some fresh spinach, fresh basil, and other fresh vegetables to boost the flavor and the nutrition of the dish. So by gradually introducing healthy foods into otherwise unhealthy diets, they can train their taste buds to enjoy fresh vegetables. One surprising thing I noticed was children at WIC clinics were less afraid to try my fresh food samples compared to their parents. And most of the time, to their parents' surprise, the kids loved what they were eating. Their parents would exclaim, you know, I didn't know my kid liked that or would even eat anything like that. And the third reason you can't just expect people to just throw out all of their processed foods is many people these days simply don't know how to cook. And I don't want to insinuate that only underprivileged populations eat too many processed foods, because that is simply not the case. It's a mainstream problem. We live in an age of microwaves, fast food, and frozen pizza. Convenient foods have taken away the need to cook. So by encouraging them to add fresh produce to their pantry items or pre-made foods, you know, even if it's adding grilled zucchini to a frozen pizza, this is a less intimidating experience for them than telling them to get out their pots and pans and cook like Julia Child. So with this approach, the hope is that by slowly introducing more fresh fruits and vegetables into their diets, they will develop a healthier lifestyle that is less dependent on processed foods. As I mentioned earlier, there were three components why it's best to buy fresh local foods. The first was fresh food can be fast, which I just covered, and the second component is fresh food is fundamental. Message being, by buying fresh local foods, you can have a universal impact and make a difference on many levels. Number one, you support local economy. When you buy fresh foods from local producers, you not only support local economy, you know where your food is coming from and you stay connected to your community. Number two, you consume more nutrition. By shopping locally, you consume produce picked at its peak ripeness. Fresh produce tastes better and it contains more nutrition since it hasn't traveled hundreds and hundreds of miles for days and days. Fresh produce is less processed, so it contains less or no pesticides, waxes, or preservatives, and other chemicals used to make grocery store produce look fresher than they really are. Number three, by eating more produce, you can reduce risk for chronic disease. Jason kind of mentioned this earlier. Fresh local foods have higher antioxidants and they are anti-inflammatory, which protects against heart disease, diabetes, obesity, cancer, and osteoporosis. Number four, you support sustainable agriculture. Less carbon footprint when you buy local produce as opposed to industrialized agriculture, which is detrimental to the environment. Less food miles eliminates or lowers environmental damage. Less resources like water and fuel are used. Less toxins are released into the environment. And number five, community ties are improved. When we are able to connect with our communities, a sense of pride is instilled. So, underprivileged populations may not go into eating fresh produce to change the world, but they certainly can feel good knowing in their own little way that they are making a difference. Big change, after all, starts with small steps. And the last component to the benefits of buying fresh local food is fresh local foods can be fun. And this is where my culinary training comes in. I want to encourage people to look at food mindfully and to cook with their four senses: sight, taste, touch, and smell. By encouraging people to eat a rainbow of foods, they are able to get a variety of nutrients. Taste. By incorporating sweet, sour, bitter, salty, and umami into each meal, you are creating optimal flavors, which makes food more exciting. Umami, by the way, is the fifth taste experienced by our taste buds. It is a rich, savory, pungent, meaty taste which sends our taste buds into ecstasy. It is the taste that makes the angels sing on high. Umami can be found in mushrooms, tomatoes, Parmesan cheese, and fermented foods like soy sauce. Touch. Think about balancing different textures into your meals. Crunchy, crispy, juicy, creamy, flaky. Rather than serving something like, say, soft meatloaf with a side of soft mashed potatoes and a slice of soft bread, make sure your plate has a variety of textures. Instead, your plate could have soft meatloaf with a side of crisp green beans sprinkled with slivered crunchy almonds, served with a side of juicy peach slices. Or as you can see in this picture, this yogurt parfait has a variety of textures going on. There is the creaminess of the yogurt, the juicy, plump berries that are just waiting to burst into your mouth, and then the crunch of the granola. Smell. By adding aromatics to your meals, such as carrots, onions, garlic, celery, and fresh herbs, you not only boost the nutrition and the flavor of your dish, but your house will smell good too. And if your house smells good, then whatever you're cooking is going to taste good, right? Next, I kind of want to sidetrack into the avenue in case you're interested in conducting a live food demonstration, because it does actually take a lot of preparation and organization. First, you must figure out where your demonstrations will take place and who your audience is, and create recipes accordingly. Next, you want to come up with versatile recipes that people will want to prepare while introducing them to new ideas and new flavors. My recipes usually had some sort of twist to them. For example, watermelon salad with arugula and feta. You can easily find watermelons at farmers markets as well as arugula. The twist here is the feta cheese. If something, it's something that may not, people may not expect in a fruit salad, but the recipe is versatile in that they can leave out the feta cheese, or it can be swapped out for another cheese like fresh mozzarella. This salad is also the perfect example of balancing tastes. The watermelon is sweet, the vinegar in the recipe is sour, the arugula is bitter, and the cheese is salty as well as umami. Traveling to different locations and setting up food demonstrations requires packing and transferring everything that will be needed for the demonstration. So I created a food demo checklist. I prepared a checklist for sanitation items such as portable water jugs, spray cleaners, paper towels, trash cans, trash bags. I prepared a checklist for kitchen utensils like tongs and spoons and cutting boards and knives and mixing bowls and blenders for gazpacho soup. I prepared a checklist for materials like my Buy Fresh, Buy Local directories, surveys, pens, recipe cards. I had a checklist for emergency things like Band-Aids and antibiotic creams, and I had a checklist for the recipes I would be preparing, plus the vessel for which I would be serving the food in, like, plastic bowls or Dixie cups. So these are some of the things that you have to think about if you're going to take your show on the road like me. Preparation is absolutely key. In closing, disadvantaged populations need two things. Number one, education, and number two, access. We have to educate people and give them access to fresh foods, whether it be teaching them to grow their own garden or making fresh local foods more available and affordable. Once they have access to fresh foods, it's imperative that we teach them that they can preserve, freeze, and prepare fresh foods. And by doing this, we empower people to be self-sufficient and less dependent on industrialized food. Driving to 7 Iowa counties and conducting 14 food demonstrations had me on the road quite a bit. Taking these road trips really made me appreciate just how beautiful Iowa is. And driving the back roads and watching the Iowa landscape pass me by was a moment that didn't go unappreciated. I was grateful to be celebrating two things I love. Number one, fresh food, and number two, making a difference in the lives of people. There's nothing like making a nutritious recipe and then watching a child gobble it up and then ask for seconds. When we feed our children good food, we are not only nourishing their bodies, but we are nourishing their minds and paving the way towards brighter futures. There's much work to be done in serving underprivileged populations, but when you find educators who are armed with passion, it seems less like a job and more like a mission. Change doesn't have to happen overnight, but we have to be persistent, we have to think outside of the box, and we have to approach food differently. We have to be willing to meet people in the middle. Thank you.
Alexi, thank you so much. And how appropriate we put you on just before lunch, because I bet everybody's going to be reaching for their fruits and vegetables for lunch today. Thanks.
Great, you're welcome.
And now let's switch things over to Teresa.
Hello, everyone. I'm Teresa Wiemerslage. I work for ISU Extension and Outreach, one of the core partners of the Northeast Iowa Food and Fitness Initiative. You can see on this map that Our work focuses on the 6 rural counties in the corner of Northeast Iowa. We are about the size of Connecticut and have about 100,000 people. Diverse groups and partnerships have joined together to create a common vision for our region. The regional learning communities involving farmers, schools, youth, active living supporters, and community health help nurture quality relationships and policy and system change successes that we're seeing here in our region. Our work has been funded largely by the W.K. Kellogg Foundation. They invest in community-driven projects across the country that work to change policies and systems to make the healthy choice the easy choice. Kellogg's investment in Northeast Iowa started in 2008 when we were selected as one of 9 sites to be a food and fitness community with a 2-year planning grant. That was followed by a 3-year implementation grant. We are really excited to receive another 4 years of funding from the Kellogg Foundation to move from implementation to an extended funding phase with a focus on long-term sustainability. Food and Fitness is guided by a regional leadership council of local community members, and the work is grounded by the staff of 4 core partner organizations, which you can see on your screen: ISU Extension and Outreach, Luther College, the Northeast Iowa Community College, and Upper Explorerland Regional Planning Commission. These are organizations, each with differing missions, all unite under a common vision for the region: to provide access to healthy, locally grown food with abundant opportunities for physical activity and play every day. We believe that together we can grow healthy kids. So if we look at our organization just a little bit closer, it helps show the strategies we've identified for our work and how these partnerships help support that. Each of these strategies is grounded in the work of a core partner, and we are focused on changing the environments where people live, work, and play. So let's start with the top circle. I think my little arrow still works. Northeast Iowa Community College is the partner working to ensure that caregivers of children from birth to age 5 are creating healthy environments for our youngest children to give them a great start for a healthy life. Luther College is also focused on places where children are, the schools. They work with school wellness teams, faculty, students, and administration to ensure that school district policies and practices support the healthy living of children, families, and community members. Upper Explorerland Regional Planning Commission helps communities have a built environment that supports walking, biking, and physical activity. And last but not least, ISU Extension and Outreach works to ensure that local health promoting food is available and affordable in all communities, neighborhoods, and institutions. We also coordinate the youth engagement work for the initiative because we believe that youth are partners with us to create these changes. We have grounded the youth activities in the 4-H Youth Development Program. So today I want to share 2 examples of how diverse partnerships are increasing access to local food in our region. The two programs I want to talk about are the Farmers Market Coupon Program and Homegrown School Lunch Week. So first, the Farmers Market Coupon Program. Now this is not the same coupon program that many of you might be familiar with. It is not the Farmers Market Senior Nutrition Program or the WIC program. This is something that we actually created up here in Northeast Iowa. We were finding that while we have many farmers markets in Northeast Iowa, they tend to be very small and they don't have very many fruit or vegetable vendors in comparison to some of the other vendors. So we were finding it hard to get vendors to attend training to be able to accept the state level coupons. And for some of the markets, we didn't even have enough vendors to participate in order to get that market certified. So we were looking for other ways to reach out to vulnerable populations. So the idea from this project came from our friends in Wisconsin. The community foundation across the river had been running a successful donor-sponsored program and gave us some startup funds to launch the program in Iowa. So we worked with the Northeast Iowa Funders Network, which is a collaboration of our community foundations in the 6 counties, and the Community Foundation of Greater Dubuque to help find donors to provide the matching funds for this project. The first year, we launched the program at 3 markets in Waukon, Riceville, and Kelmer, and the second year, we added the New Hampton Farmers Market. There are 2 main partnerships that are needed to make this program work. First of all, you have to have staff at the local food is willing to distribute coupons to their clients. And then you also need to have a farmer's market with a manager or a volunteer willing to coordinate the coupon processing for the vendors. I want to point out that our Kelmer site was unique in that they don't have a regular farmer's market in that town. We actually worked with a local farmer who had a farm stand and a retail grocery store front to help redeem the coupons in that community. So let's talk about the food pantry side first. This is what the coupons look like, nothing too flashy or fancy, but what we did is the coupons were distributed through the local food pantries to qualifying households once a month. And you can see on the screen, individuals were eligible for 1 $5 coupon, couples could get 2 coupons, and families were eligible to get 4 coupons once a month. The pantry then recorded the households that received the coupons, not necessarily by name, but by the number that went out on a log sheet so that we could keep track of how many coupons were going out to the community. On the farmers market side, the coupons could be used at the farmers market or the farm stand for locally grown fresh produce or eggs only. The locally grown, the way we defined it for this project, meant that the farmer who grows the produce is selling the produce in person at the market, and the fresh produce included unprocessed fruits and vegetables. At the beginning of the season, we talked to all the vendors at the farmers market about the program. At the end of each day, the farmers would turn in their coupons to the market manager or to the volunteer. The manager would then have cash on hand to give to the farmer. We learned that we had to give the farmers market money up front to be able to have that cash on hand. Some of these farmers markets, small ones, didn't have that capacity. They had to complete a log and submit it to us in order to ask for more funding if they needed more throughout the season. Here's a summary of the program for the first year of our project. We started it in mid-July and ran it through the end of September. 676 coupons were distributed to almost 260 families. We had a redemption rate of about 31%. About a dozen farmers sold products through this program and received about $1,000, sold about $1,000 worth of product through this. So let's look at some of the benefits we observed by running this type of program. First of all, the need is great. In the Waukon community alone, they were serving over 150 families a month through their food pantry. The folks who brought their coupons to the farmers market greatly expressed their appreciation at being able to incorporate more fresh produce into their meals. The coupons also brought in customers that were not typical farmers market customers, so it was a great way to engage with them and help them connect to their food. If you're looking at an average redemption rate in Waukon, when it was at the peak of the season, they were looking at $50 to $60 per week. And the coordinators reported that the program was really easy to run and the vendors were happy to participate. So we have plans to continue again this year. This is an example of a program that can run off of community donations, provided that your community partners are willing to assist to make it a success. So the second example I wanted to talk about is one of our interventions with schools to encourage them to try local food for lunch. We know that in order to reach schools as a target, or children as one of our target audiences, we know we had to go where the kids are, and that is schools. So several years ago, I learned about a program in Maryland called Homegrown School Lunch Week. The program in that state was coordinated by their State Department of Agriculture, and it was set up so that schools could apply for mini grants to serve locally grown foods for lunch. I loved this idea and started working on how to implement it in Northeast Iowa. So first, we secured some funding to provide food service equipment grants to 15 different schools. We used an easy online registration forms for schools to sign up. They submitted the lunch menu for the week and then planned the activities for the week. The school had to submit a final report, which included how many kids were reached, what did they do, what did people say about it, and then we wanted some pictures so I can share them with people like you. Match was required for this project. We asked them to submit copies of invoices for up to $300 in local food purchases since August 1st. Now note, we made it a bigger window for those local food purchases because some schools actually had trouble spending $300 in 1 week. If you're just serving apples and you're a small school, you can usually get enough apples for $50 or $100. So it took them a little bit more time to be able to reach that match, but they did it. We also asked them to submit an annual school survey where we track farm to school progress and local food purchases for these schools. In return, when they successfully completed all of their requirements, the school got to choose a piece of kitchen equipment as a reward. And here are some examples of some of the equipment that was offered. These packages are all roughly $300 with shipping. We've learned very quickly that having this small investment in equipment really helps increase the use and availability and willingness of food service to participate in projects like this. Having even this small type of equipment to quickly process whole fruits and vegetables really makes it easier for them to use the local foods. We also provided schools with marketing materials that they could download and display. So here you can see an example of a table tent and a bookmark that we used that they could print off and use to celebrate the week. It's a fun activity. The whole school gets involved. On the left side of your screen is a picture of some of the school youth team members that went to a local farmer's market to buy vegetables. Then they came to school early on one of those days to help prep all those vegetables for lunch. On the right-hand side is the potato crew from South Winneshiek. They came in early before school to help scrub potatoes so that they could have potatoes for Homegrown School Lunch Week. The kids love the new foods. One young man said that he didn't want to eat the broccoli for lunch, but when he found out it was from Farmer Glenn's farm, he quickly changed his mind. He said, "I know Glenn, and I've been to his farm. He raises good food." And then he promptly ate the rest of his broccoli for lunch. The week is fun. Sometimes Homegrown School Lunch Week falls on the same week as homecoming, and I'm sure as most of us remember from homecoming days, there was always a theme for the different weeks. So here you can see a superhero who was caught in the act of eating his local potatoes. One school planted red and blue potatoes in their school garden for the kids to harvest. Those are the school colors, and the red and blue potatoes were served for lunch during homecoming week. Even the school food service gets into the spirit. Here, these are food service ladies from Decorah. They dressed up as veggies for the homecoming parade and handed out bags of veggies for snacks. If you're just thinking about getting into farm to school, an activity like Homegrown School Lunch Week is an easy and not so scary way to try something. I think you can create the same excitement without all the incentives, but they certainly don't hurt. Food service appreciates the equipment. We had one school who received a Sunkist sectionizer, and the elementary kitchen borrowed it and never returned it. So that school had to get another one for the high school kitchen. This event is quickly adopted through the whole school by teachers and students. Some of the classes went on visits to farms and apple orchards. Other classes plan activities to do in the school garden. The event quickly grows from just doing one food during the week to doing something every day. I think the food service directors enjoy the challenge of planning for that week. So what's next for us? We're starting to see more schools participating in this week without all the rewards, which is really neat to see. This makes me think that it can be implemented in other locations just as easily. We are starting to transition from 1 week of activities to a month of activities, from Homegrown School Lunch Week to October Farm to School Month. Our schools have so much going on, it's hard to cram everything into 1 week, so we want them to start thinking bigger. Now that there's a stronger push for a Farm to School Month on the national level, we are working with schools to plan activities all month long. And we continue to work towards progress. We want to see schools buy more food from local farmers. One way we do that is through our school survey. Remember how I said that we asked those schools to complete a survey for us each year as a requirement for their reward? One of the things we asked them is how much do they spend on local food each school year? And here's our chart since we've started tracking. During the 2011 and 12 school year, 16 schools reported a little over $14,000 in purchases. This is a great way and great data to take back to your school stakeholders to show them about the impact that you can have by creating these connections in a community. But keep in mind that getting local foods into schools is hard work. There are lots of regulations, processes, and barriers that need to be navigated, but it's not impossible. With good conversations and partnerships, we can continue to make progress and show people how local food is good for you, your family, your school, community, local farms, and the environment. Thank you.
Teresa, thank you so much. And thanks for everybody for hanging in there with us. I know we're a little bit past our 90 minutes. We've got some great questions for our panelists. And so let's move things along here. And just to give you a couple of upcoming dates for the Food Access and Health Work Group, we will have our spring gathering on April 19th at the Iowa Arboretum in Madrid, and we will be launching our Cultivate Iowa Food Gardening Messaging campaign. And so Food Access and Health Work Group and Regional Food System Work Group partners are more than invited to attend. We also will be holding our summer gathering on July 12th and fall gathering on October 4th. And Jessica, do you want to highlight the things that are coming up for the regional food systems?
Yes, the Roadmap to Resilience, Empowering Iowa's Local Food Economy is coming up on March 19th and 20th. This is bringing national and local speakers to share their experience and expertise on building a sustainable food economy. Workshops are going to focus on food businesses, food incentives for the farm to school and farm to institution, and beginning and minority farmers. There's going to be an exhibit hall and a great network to connect with. Following the Roadmap to Resilience conference, the Regional Food System Working Group will be holding their spring meeting, where the long-range vision of the working group will be explored along with food system activities and fundraising. So we hope you all can join us next week.
Great, thank you. So back to our panelists. We have a few questions that have come in this morning, and the first two are for Jason. Jason, the first question is, wonderful plans for AIMS, but have any of them been implemented?
Some of the one plan that has been implemented roughly has been at the Beloit Lutheran Services, the one graphic I showed of the home where children live. They, after seeing that, developed a community garden on their property, and they're partnering with the church that is just next door to the north that has a food bank. So the children are helping grow the food, and some of it they're using themselves, and then some are going to the community food bank.
Great, thank you. The next question is for Kim and for Jason. When estimating the amount of food that can be grown in an urban area, do either one of you have some good databases or resources that can help, whether they're planners or food policy councils, determine how much food can be grown in an area? Kim?
This is Kim. So I have done a little bit of this work, but in Canada. And so I am familiar most recently, I guess, with the British Columbia estimates. They might be transferable to other locations in the United States, but maybe Jason has specific US data. But I recently completed an agriculture plan with a colleague on 275 acres in southern British Columbia, and we did just that. We estimated how much could be grown, what was the economic feasibility and viability of doing such a large-scale urban agriculture project.
Great, thanks.
And the way that I did my data crunching was I developed a spreadsheet with some help of some, Excel whizzes at Iowa State, and so I used average yield data for a variety of crops, and then use USDA average annual consumption data that they have that helps estimate how much food of a certain type of vegetable a person uses on an annual basis.
Okay.
And I can possibly share that, but I don't really know if I want to share it to everyone.
Yeah, okay. Thanks, Jason and Kim. The next set of questions are for Alexi. Alexi, the first question is have you worked together with FNEP or SNAP-Ed to reach this audience?
I have not yet, and hopefully that's something that I can do in the near future.
Okay, great. Next question is the use of arugula. Is arugula something that low-income families can afford in Iowa?
Well, I think that, if you teach people to grow things on their own, of course, I think it can be affordable. And getting back to the farmers markets, like I said, there are different little ways that sometimes, you can stretch your dollar. You don't have to spend $30 on something. It can be just a couple of things and that you can introduce into your meals. And at the end of the market, sometimes you can get things for a discount. So
Great. Okay, thanks. And
can happen. Yes.
of course, growing things is the most inexpensive way of getting
Right.
fresh foods on your plate.
Yes.
Great, thanks. And a follow-up question to that, Alexi, is did you just do demos or did you get the participants involved with the food preparation?
For this project, I just did demos. I had everything on hand for me to prepare. So it was more about me showing them and giving them the resources. So hopefully they could take that information home and utilize what they were taught at the time. So
Okay, thanks. And the last question, I'm going to pitch this to everybody. This has to do with gleaning initiatives. With the activities that are happening in your region in Iowa, and Kim, even from a Canadian or national perspective, do you have any resources for folks who would like to start gleaning initiatives? So Teresa, let's start with you. Do you have anything up in Northeast Iowa?
We are currently not doing any type of gleaning projects. There's all sorts of logistics in that, food safety, when finding enough volunteers, where is the route it's going to go, and we've been really focused on the production side that we haven't fully dived into the gleaning portion of it yet.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thanks. Jason, what about in the Amana area?
I haven't been directly participating with it, but the organization Matthew 25 in Cedar Rapids that has the urban farm, during the summer months they have youth groups, volunteer organizations, business employees from businesses that come and volunteer for them, and they have in the past taken those volunteers to a couple larger farms and helped them harvest product, and then they one of the things they do is provide experiences for those volunteers, so they also help in food banks too.
Right.
So they already have a source of where that food's going to.
Great. And we also have the organization Table to Table that works in
Mm-hmm.
Cedar Rapids and Iowa City that gleans food from institutions and retail. Yeah. Alexi, anything in the southern part of the state?
not yet.
Okay.
Maybe soon.
Okay. And yes.
Angie, this is Teresa.
Yes.
When you say gleaning, I went to going out to the fields and gleaning the fields. There's something similar that the Winneshiek Farmers Market does, in that at the end of the Farmers Market day, volunteers from the Decorah Food Shelf will go pick up any extra produce that the vendors have that they want to donate, and they will take it back to the food shelf.
Yes.
So it's a different twist on gleaning.
Yeah, that's a great example, Teresa. In fact, here in Des Moines, we have Meals from the Market, in which the DMARC Move the food pantries pick up food from vendors after the Des Moines Farmers Market. So that's another excellent example. Kim, do you have any suggestions for those who might want to start gleaning projects?
Yes, we came across a few examples. I can't think of all of them off the top of my head, but I would recommend looking at the appendix of the report I spoke about in the presentation. There's a section that talks about food procurement and food waste strategies, and lists a lot of different municipalities and counties across the United States and what they're doing related to those issues. And I believe gleaning came up as a couple strategies. I would highlight Portland, Oregon, I believe, from a city perspective, is trying to do a bit related to food gleaning. And then from a institutional perspective, Virginia Tech University in Blacksburg, Virginia, has also been working quite a bit on the food waste component and then the gleaning component. And then last but not least, I would just say that in any strategy to address food gleaning, I think it's really important from the get-go to involve the health department, because then you can avoid any kind of issues that you may come across if you don't involve them and don't learn about some of the potential health consequences.
Excellent point, Kim. Thank you. Thank you very much. And with that, we'll round out our webinar. Thank you for those who have stayed on for a few extra moments. I want to thank Jessica especially for working with me in assembling and providing you this webinar today. And a very special thank you to Kim, Jason, Alexi, and Teresa for really giving us some very innovative strategies, to really let us think about how food security differently. I think we're in a new era where our strategies really need to take more of a policy systems and an environment approach. And thank to each of you for sharing innovative strategies, not only from Iowa, but from a national perspective in ways in which we all can increase access to healthy foods through a community-based food systems lens. And with that, if anyone would like to send any feedback on this webinar, my email is on the screen. We would really enjoy hearing back from you, and also suggestions for other ideas and topics that we can address via webinars. And I also encourage you to think about becoming a member of the Iowa Food Systems Council, and you can go to iowafoodsystemscouncil.org to learn more. Thank you very much and have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Thank you, Angie.
Thanks all.